The temperature's plummeted. Must be field days week because it's all starting to happen. So welcome, and we've got a couple of speakers tonight. I'm going to do an intro and then pass to Warwick Lamp, who's the electoral officer, and then there'll be a section in there about the regional council as well. But I'm going to ask Whaia here in the front row to start us with an evening karakia so that we can bring great energy into the room and have good conversation tonight, and then close at the end also with karakia, which is all about us bringing energy together and then having safe, courageous conversations, and then at the end of the night leaving them here and going away safely to our own individual homes. So kia ora, Whaia, tēnā koe.
Whare tūnei tēnā koe, ki apakura ki Raukala, tēnā koutou katoa. He moi tātou. E te are ki Kaharawa, i tēnei pō kia kai tonu i tēnei pō, mihi atu ki a koutou mo te kōrero tia, mo te kaunihira o Waipa District Council. Tuturu o whakamaua ki a Tina.
Tina.
Onge hui
Tā kia. Kia ora Whaia, tēnā koe, nā mehe motu karakia. Nau mai haere mai, ki te kaunihira ārohi o Waipa, welcome and good evening. I am Steph O'Sullivan, I'm the Chief Executive here at Council, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all here into the chamber. There's plenty of food and drink, so please take this as an informal evening, and if you would like a drink or something to eat, hi Ed, please help yourself during the evening, and we'll certainly be here at the end of the evening as well to take questions. So as I say, I'm Steph O'Sullivan. I've been here in the role as Chief Executive for 10 months, and in the front row here is Kirsty Downey, who is the Deputy Chief Executive. And we have, I just want to acknowledge a couple of sitting councillors. So we have Mike Pettit here in the front row, Claire St Pierre, current councillors, and a current chair of our community board here in Taumutu, Ange Holt. So kia ora. I'm going to try and get through my presentation. It's really just to set the scene for Warwick, who's actually the electoral officer, who will speak to you more about the mechanics of the election. But it's great to see such a strong interest in serving Waipa, the place we call home. And this evening is designed to give you a clear and honest picture of what's involved in standing for and serving on council. So we'll look at how we work as a council. We'll look at the importance of public service, our direction, our strategic priorities, a little bit about what makes a good councillor, and what challenges we're facing, which hopefully gives you a bit of a picture. And then, as I say, Warwick and Marley will get into the mechanics of it. So standing for council is a serious commitment, but it's also one of the most rewarding ways to help shape the future of our district. So I'm going to hope that this works. Right. So how Waipa District Council works, and there's a lot of interesting kōrero always about how council works, but in a nutshell, we're made up of a mayor and 11 councillors who are obviously elected by the community. The role of an elected member is to govern, and that means using best practice governance guidelines. It includes setting the vision and strategic priorities, commissioning budgets to enable the work programs to achieve those priorities, effective monitoring and holding to account, and to ensure we meet all of our legislative responsibilities as council. While you stand for a particular ward, once elected, your role will be to work in the best interests of the whole district, no matter what area you've been voted in to represent. So that's a standard governance principle, and it applies in local government. And you'll be part of a team making collective decisions in formal meetings and workshops and briefings guided by legislation, policy and community engagement. And a recent reflection, this is not to put you off, but we've just completed our long-term plan engagement. We saw a few of you there, along with our waters engagement. And for example, Kirsty and I were talking today, along with elected members, we were attended sort of 16 or 18 different engagements to try and be available for community and out and about. The community is at the heart of everything we do. And it's something that we talk about all of the time, and we are disciplined about practicing. The execution of that strategy that the mayor and councillors are responsible for designing, the execution of it and all that entails is my remit and my responsibility as the chief executive. I am the sole employee of the councillors, and I employ everybody else in the council. So that's my responsibility under the Health and Safety Act. For example, a couple of us have had a chat about health and safety. I am the PCBU, so I carry the responsibility and I carry the can for the 370 old souls that come to work for us every day and their work environment. And I'm responsible for ensuring that we as staff give life and execute delivery of Council's strategy. You'll know, of course, that we also have wards across our district. So there are five wards, and that includes the Waipa Māori ward. The one Māori ward councillor represents the entire district. And then, of course, we have some core committees just in terms of structure. And at each triennium, the Mayor is responsible for looking at the design of committees, thinking about what committees they want, and how to populate those committees and how they work together. So that's a really critical part of work that happens at the beginning of each triennium. And of course, we have community boards. So we have Ange here today and a couple of you who have been associated with community boards. They play a key role in representing local voice and partnering with us to achieve the strategic vision, but in a local way, which is really important. Why public service matters? And it does matter. Public service is a critical part of the functioning of our democracy. And in local government, the impact of your decisions is visible and immediate. A little bit less so if you're in central government. Very visible and very immediate when you're in local government. And that includes from how safe our roads are to where housing gets built. Local decisions have real impact. And we do have a bigger, more direct impact on everyday life in many ways than working in a central government agency, which is both a challenge and an opportunity. Elected members often talk about themselves as being kaitiaki or guardians of the district. And public service is definitely about ensuring that we grow inclusion. We are here to represent all of our communities, trust and long-term strategic decision-making. It means thinking beyond today's headlines and focusing on long-term outcomes for everyone who lives here. Making the right decision is not necessarily the popular decision. And making mokopuna decisions or cathedral thinking is what is required. Our assets have often 50 years or more of life in them. How we shape communities, good placemaking has intergenerational impact. And that is more than in just straight financial terms. So public service requires leaders, listeners, advocates, and connectors. And if you're standing because you want to make a difference and you want to support great outcomes for all and help shape a better future, then you're in the right place tonight. And I'm begging that you are in the right place tonight. So what are we working on? So you'll know our vision, you'll see it around the place, home of champions, and boy, are we the home of champions. And we're also about building connected communities. This is really important to us. And you see the 4 key priorities there around social wellbeing, being environmental champions, cultural champions, and economically progressive. To deliver on that vision, we have recently approved Ahuaki, our 30-year Waipa spatial plan, and many of you were involved in developing that. And it is quite unique. It's won national and international awards, and it's now looked to as a best practice piece of work from a district council across New Zealand. It's something we can be truly proud of. And delivering Ahuaki is going to guide everything that we do. It's going to ensure that we have integrity in our decision-making. It's going to lead us in terms of collaboration with our partners, our focus on community outcomes, and a sustainable approach to growth, or as much as we can. The sustainability and growth sometimes can be oxymorons, but we're having a good go at that. So our current priorities, just the things, what's going on in our world. You might be thinking, okay, so what are they actually thinking about and what's going on? Some of you already have a really good handle on this. And here's Steph being tested in terms of her tech capability. There's a little video there. Infrastructure resilience. So that means Is our infrastructure that stands today going to meet the test of time as we build new infrastructure? Will that stand the test of time? It's kind of related to climate change as well. Increased weather events, natural hazards. We need to make sure we're building infrastructure that is fit for purpose, affordable, and meets the needs of our community. At the moment, as you know, we're considering the future delivery of water services. And this is one of the biggest decisions that Council will be making since local government reform in 1989, but it's really exciting as well, and the future is bright in the Waikato in terms of water services delivery. But it's a big, complex piece of work. Growth management, as we've said, the amount of people who want to make Waipa home is increasing. And in fact, growth is one of our biggest challenges. We're one of what's called Tier 1 growth councils in the country. So that means our rate of growth is much faster than most other councils. So if you think about Queenstown Lakes, think about Hamilton, think about Waikato District, Tauranga, Western Bay, we're in that group of Tier 1 growth councils. And this means we're subject to things like the government's National Policy Statement on Urban Development, and we have to have plans in place which show how we're going to grow houses, how we're going to put infrastructure in the ground, and how we're going to meet that need. It's not an option, it's something that we have to deliver. So that makes our place pretty unique, but by 2034, we're expecting more than 74,000 people to call Waipa home. 74,000 people, and that means we need another 7,000 homes. And we also need to plan for workplaces, commercial development and industrial development. And I know many of you here tonight are in business in one form or another. And so that gives you a clue of how we need to provide for all of those components: good employment, good jobs, good industrial development, for example, around Hautapu and Cambridge. And councillors play a central role in leading this work. Sorry, I'm going to go back a step there. I'll go back, sorry. Just want to confuse something. So a really critical part of that, of course, is partnerships with iwi and mana whenua across the district. Whaia, who opened our hui tonight, mentioned a couple of the iwi. We have a range of iwi and mana whenua partners, whether it's Waikato Tainui, Ngāti Haua, Ngāti Maniapoto, Raukawa, Ngāti Apakura, Ngāti Hakairo, a range of Ngāti Koriki Kahukura, and they are key partners who have got long-term interests, long-term connection, but long-term interests with us in terms of those aspirations for community wellbeing, economic and sustainability, environmental outcomes, and we do a lot with our iwi partners. And an ongoing real focus of ours, of course, is general community wellbeing, and that's represented by housing, great places, great communities to live in, great facilities. So, and of course, I mentioned climate change in terms of infrastructure, but of course, climate change is increasingly something that we are paying attention to, needing to pay attention to, and it affects across the whole range of business that we have and will increasingly do so. So that's what we're thinking about at the moment. Challenges in the path ahead. So like many councils, and it's certainly in the media, we're facing financial pressures, particularly so because we're a Tier 1 growth council. Infrastructure demands when you're trying to provide for more people, and whether it's infill or new housing, and community expectations that often grow faster than the resources we have to be able to meet those expectations. So that's some of the tensions we face. There are increasing pressures with ongoing reform from central government. So there's a lot of reform that happens in Wellington and we respond to that, but there's also unfunded mandates. So Wellington often makes decisions and says, right, local government, you need to now do this. And it might be a new building compliance piece, or it might be a new water standard that we need to meet, but they don't provide the funding to do that work. And we face that on an increasing basis. So another challenge for us. As we've talked about, the waters transition, our waters business transition, and for our iwi partners sitting in the room, significant changes to resource management reform. That is going to be the most significant reform since it was actually brought in 1991. So there's been creeping change, but this is signalling significant change. And of course, ensuring that our iwi partners, their voices and those partnerships are embedded in our decision making, and that we enable the capacity and capability of our iwi partners to be involved in our work as required under the Local Government Act. We're taking a more proactive approach to how we consider the climate change impacts in our district, and of course doing that regionally as well. So Marley's here from the Regional Council, and we do a lot of work with the other councils across the region, including the Regional Council, and climate change adaptation and responsiveness is one of those pieces of work. So ultimately then, if you're ready to help lead Waipa through challenge and change, and whether that's on a community board or standing for council, we would really welcome your nomination. And my last slide is about the good old question about what makes a good elected member. What does make a good elected member? So these are the things we've sat and thought about. Community mindedness, with a willingness to learn. We need a learning mindset. There is so much to absorb, so much to learn, so much to process that a willingness to learn is really essential. They need to be a good communicator and, most importantly, a good listener. Resilient. This isn't a job for the faint-hearted. I've got to say that up front. It's exciting, it's challenging, it's so rewarding. But to be resilient, to be able to be objective, even when you feel really passionate about something, and to be respectful, which is challenging, right? Because we need to challenge the idea, not the person. And we need good, healthy, robust discussion and debate. That's a premise of democracy. And you can see around the world where that's not going so well. Understand governance versus operational roles. There is a very clear distinction between governance and senior management and operational. They can get a little bit grey in local government because we're all here trying to deliver for our communities, but essentially being respectful and understanding well the difference between those two elements of the organisation. Being able to collaborate, which is kind of a result of all those other things, but being able to collaborate, think strategically and long term. Some of the decisions we make are for now, but many of the decisions we make are for the medium to long term and beyond. That's intergenerational thinking. And most importantly, having courage and being prepared to make decisions. Progress, not perfection. Knowing that you're in a collection of people, as we said at the outset, there's 11 people around the table. And so we need to find agreement or enough agreement to make decisions and keep moving. So folks, it's an exciting time. It really is. That's why I'm here. It's why our senior leadership team is here. And why lots of people across the country will be standing for local government. So our nominations open on Friday, July the 4th, which is quite ironic, isn't it, given that date. And if you're ready, as we say, to help lead Waipa through challenge and change, we really welcome your nomination. And the electoral officer here today, Warwick Lamp, is going to speak to you more, as I say, about the mechanics and the law around standing. And Jo Greed is here. She's the Deputy Electoral Registrar, works for Council, but that's a role she has which is separate to her Council role. And we really encourage you or anybody that you know who might be thinking to consider standing for Waipa Home of Champions and helping us build community, connected communities into the future. It's an exciting time and we need great people on the journey. So again, once again, thanks for making it out on such a horrible night out there, cold and wet. We will be staying around to answer any questions at the end of the evening or during the presentation. And thank you for being here. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Sorry, I've got a presentation to shoot through. I've got about 60 slides to go through. Oh, I love PowerPoint. I'm going to read every single word on every slide. Not. All right. I'm going to skip through some of them pretty quick. Steph's covered off in her presentation some of the slides at the start about what it means to be an elected member. So that makes my job a little bit easier. But I'm going to talk about the nuts and bolts of the election process. Some of it's a bit compliancy. It's all covered in the legislation. And let's be frank, talking about elections is sometimes not the world's most exciting topic. So I'll try and lighten it up as we go and keep you entertained. It'll take about an hour for my piece, and Marley's got a few slides at the end for a few minutes, but we should be done by 8 o'clock. All right. Okay. This is who I am. Work for a company called elections.com, based in Christchurch. And as Steve said, Joe over the back here is the Deputy Election Officer who'll be looking after the nuts and bolts on the ground in the council. And these are all the things that I do. I live in Tauranga, born and bred in Martin, Rangitikei. Who's been to Martin? Oh, just about everyone. That hardly ever happens. Lived in Christchurch before the earthquakes, Christchurch refugee, I guess. We do lots of elections all the time. We're doing elections around the country, about a couple hundred a year. Council elections are the only elections that we do that are postal only anymore. Every other election we do has an online component, or if not entirely online. Work for 44 councils as EO, process votes for 47 councils based in Christchurch, where all of those councils' voting papers go to. I've done about 900 council elections and by-elections. I've done this presentation probably 250 times. So yes, I can do it in my sleep. Well, who else is involved in council elections? Actually, not many people. Yes, the Electoral Commission provide us with the electoral rolls for sending out the voting documents to. The Ombudsman does not have any jurisdiction over council elections, nor does the Electoral Commission. Lagoima doesn't apply to me as a third-party contractor, as a private company, and I do answer to a district court judge. So if someone is unhappy about the decisions that I make, a district court judge is the process to go through. What's local government about? Luckily, Steph's covered most of this, so I can skip through these slides. As she said, these are the key things that elected members do. Very complex, big organisation with lots of pieces of legislation. I think you said 370 staff. What's the annual turnover? Yeah, 150 mil a year business. Big business, lots of moving parts, lots of legislation. And as Steve said, it's not a 5-minute job. I do want to make sure, I should have said before you go away tonight, make sure that you've had all of your questions answered about elections and election land. So sing out at any time as we go through. This is casual first name terms. Just put your hand up and ask anything, and then we can catch up afterwards later on. But as we said, not a 5-minute job. It's a big deal. Can be really rewarding. Yep.
Companies involved in counting the council votes.
Two. One company based in Auckland that does basically Hamilton City North, and uselections.com who does all the elections roughly.
You have to follow on the
Electoral Commission has no jurisdiction. Yep, so it's all covered by the Local Election Act. I'll cover this in a sec. Okay. So those there are the key things to focus on as an elected member. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say to you, it's not always a bed of roses. You'll know in social media land that sometimes can attract a bit of negativity, and sometimes safety can be compromised. So be aware of that as a candidate, be aware of that as an elected member. Council, has some structures in place for dealing with these sorts of things for those who are on council. But as candidates, just be aware of some of these things. When you're going to candidate meetings or campaign meetings, meet the candidate meetings. check out where the exits are. Check out what your de-escalation point could be if it got a bit testy. Use in your campaigning maybe a different email address than you would normally use in your personal life, different phone number, just to keep things separate, to keep yourself safe. And if your safety is compromised, you can always go to the police. But just be aware of that. As Steph said, the only person the council employs is the CE. And Steph then is responsible for the 370 staff and all the things that go with that. And the key thing there is, as Steph said, governance, not management. Big picture, not potholes, as it were. And as Steph said, these are some of the core things that are good to have. Well, has to, but, you know, thinking citywide, district-wide, complex issues to think about and understand and read. Good reading skills is really handy because some of the agendas can be 200 or 300 pages long. Good to have public speaking skills, but not the end of the world if you haven't. A few council meetings will soon knock that into shape and you'll soon pick up your public speaking skills pretty quick. But listening, reading, very, very helpful. So these are the council meetings and the deal at the moment. Morning meetings, lots of them a year. Mayor, pretty much full-time job. Councillors, 2 to 4 days, sometimes 5, can go in cycles during annual plan, long-term plan time, probably almost every day. Some other times, not so much, but flexible. In the evenings, and lots of reading of council agendas. Agendas come out electronically, what, Joe, Fridays? Thursdays, Fridays for a meeting the following week. You know, it might take a few hours to read that over the weekend or in an evening. If they were printed out, it could be that thick. And this is what the remuneration is at the moment. The Remuneration Authority does review this from time to time and it'll get updated after the election. So those are the numbers as they are, all set out in the Canada Handbook. Joe, council provides a laptop for everyone, iPad? Mayor and council's laptop, okay.
Oh,
iPad. Any questions about all that? Yeah.
Based on the feedback, some of the.
Tēnā koe. Based on the resources that OME that are granted to the councillors, being a laptop and a iPad, my query is, based on the annual salary, for some of the out-of-pocket expenses, how are they covered? For example, pūtea for petrol going to and from Pui. Is that covered by council?
Yep. Yep.
Kia ora.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Some of the details. My role is to run the election in accordance with the legislation, which is the Local Electoral Act and the Local Electoral Regulations. They are a tad prescriptive. And so my job really is to run it in accordance with that to make sure that there's a level playing field for all candidates. But what I'm not responsible for and don't care about is people's campaigning. The political campaigning space is not something I deal with. I have a sphere of caring. What people might say about each other is outside my sphere of caring. So if someone says nasty things about you and you can ring me up and complain about it, you know what I'm going to say. Too bad. Not interested. Talk to someone else. But mechanics of the election, conduct of the election, all this nuts and bolts stuff, absolutely, it's me. So here's the key slide. Lock these dates away. This slide will be up on Council's website. The timetables in the handbook. And as Steph said, key date, the first one, 4th of July. Important day, that. Yeah. I didn't tweak to that. Nominations close 12 noon, Friday, the 1st of August. Not 12:01, 12 noon. Talk a little bit about that in a minute. And this time, council elections, the voting period is a bit longer than what it was 3 years ago. Voting period's been extended 10 days, so just over a month, which means the voting papers will start going out on the 9th of September. Voting closes 11th of October. Voting papers will go out a bit slower than they have in the past, but they will start being delivered from that first day. Signs can go up 3 months, 11th of July. Signs are the bane of my life. We'll talk a bit about this later, but not that it matters to you guys, but I deal with 47 councils and 47 different hoardings policies. Some are 3 months, some are 2 months, some are 6 weeks, some have them coming down the day before, some of them having come down the day after. They're all different. When you're standing for the regional council, across different councils can be a tad tricky because you've got different rules in different councils. But here, there's what the deal is. 3 months and signs down on the couple of days after election day. As Steph said, these are the wards and the community boards that you will all be familiar with, that you can stand for. And out to the right there is the number of electors in each of those areas, not population, number of electors, as at yesterday. $11 from 5, pretty straightforward. You guys know all about this, and every person's names on the voting documents are in random order. So within your household, you and your partner's order of voting papers, order of candidates will be different. Okay? But in the candidate profile booklet, alphabetical. Any questions about that? Marley will talk a little bit about the regional council ones at the bottom later on. Also, council is having a Māori ward poll. There's 37 councils across the country in this boat. Government edict after the last election. It requires all councils who have put in the Māori ward after 2020 to have a poll this time around. Everyone in the district gets to vote for the poll, and that is the wording of what it is on the bottom. I vote to keep the Māori ward. I vote to remove the Māori ward. Waikato Regional Council doesn't have a poll because their decision was made many moons ago before 2020, exempt from this requirement. But I've got lots of my other councils around the country that have, district has a poll and the regional council has a poll, the same voting paper. Not the case here. I vote to keep, I vote to remove. Any questions about that? So it takes effect, period 2028 to 31 and 34, not 2025 to 2028 when the Māori Ward Council will be in place. Yeah.
Basically, a council can be heard till 2031, or whether they keep it themselves, the Māori Ward.
Well, this is a binding poll, so the result is in effect for the period 2028 to 2034. After 2034, council could resolve to put in place a Māori ward at that point, depending on what the legislation is about whether it has to be a poll or not at that time. Okay. So for the next 3 years, yes, there is a Māori ward councillor, irrespective of the outcome of what this poll will be. So as I said before, nominations close midday, precisely midday. He'll get sick of me saying this, but please do not leave lodging your nomination till the last minute. 50% of our candidates put their nominations in the last 48 hours, 30% on the last day. If you do that, you bring it in on the last day, in the last hour, there's something wrong and you don't have time to get it fixed by midday, you're not a candidate. So be mindful of that. If you bring it in your hot little hand, you've got to be inside the council door, inside the front door here and in Cambridge at precisely before 11:59, 59 and 1, when the PIPs go on the national program, where Jo and her team will be by the front door listening for it. If you're not inside the door at that point, too late. If you are inside the door, that's okay. Jo will then process your nomination, but if there's something wrong with it, too bad. Same goes in email land. Yes, we encourage candidates to email their nominations in. About 80% of our candidates do that across the country. You can email it, scan all the documents, send them in, no problem. Just don't leave it till the last minute, because it's not the time that you send the email that matters, it's the time that we receive it. Don't do what someone did in Tauranga last year and send their nomination at 11:58 a.m. and it turned up at council server at 12:01. 12:01 is too late. Not the time you send it, the time it is received. As you know, when you send an email, cybersecurity, council's email server, all of that stuff doesn't go like that. Can take a few minutes. Bear that in mind. Please do not leave lodging a nomination until the last minute. Yeah.
Second part, bullet point 6, contact details. Could you please determine exactly what contact details you're referring to there?
Yep, absolutely. So you've got to be a New Zealand citizen and provide citizenship evidence. Yes. The candidate contact details go on council's website after the close nominations, and that is candidate's name, affiliation and contact method, not physical address. So, mobile, email, not physical address, which is why we've put the physical address piece on the back of the nomination paper this time, so that it's not front and centre on the front of it if someone comes in and has a look at it, because the nomination paper is a public document. Anyone could come and have a look.
So apart from one's registered name,
Yep.
we can, as a candidate or prospective candidates, can nominate a email or what form of contact they choose to be made public.
That's right.
Kia ora.
Yep. You can use your commonly used name. Doesn't have to be your official name. Edward, Ted, name that you're commonly known by, maiden name, if you want, on the voting paper. Nomination paper, we want your full name so we can find you on the roll, but there's a box that says name that you want to be known on the voting paper as. No titles. Can't say doctor, professor, ONZM, all that stuff. No titles. Can have an affiliation, which is pretty much a tagline, slogan, or a political party grouping if you want. Had all sorts of interesting ones over the times. You can have independent, of course. You can have truly independent, completely and utterly always independent. Whatever you like. What are some of the interesting ones we've had, Joe? More democracy, less bureaucracy. I don't know, pretty much anything you like. 38 characters max, and a space is a character. On the nomination paper, you have to state if you live in the area in which you're standing. Of course, you don't have to. You can live wherever you like in New Zealand, as long as you're a New Zealand citizen on the electoral roll, and you can stand wherever you like. I had a guy, top of the South, last time stood for the mayoralty in 6 councils. $200 every time. Didn't get in any of them. In fact, he came last in all of them, but can be done. So you can stand wherever you like. Don't have to live in the ward or the community board that you're standing in. But you do have to state on the nomination paper if you are standing in other elections. So if you're standing for the mayoralty and the ward and the community board, which you can, $200 every time, on each of those nomination papers, you've got to say, I'm standing in this other one. And those 2 bits get printed at the top of your profile statement in the candidate profile booklet. And I'll show you what that looks like in a sec. Not part of your 150 words. Okay. And just in Marley's case, if you're doing your nominations for the regional council, they go to Marley at the council office in Hamilton. So there's a nomination paper over there, plenty of them. On the back is the section about where to send it electronically and the bank account details where to pay your $200 deposit. When you do that and you pay it electronically, which we're keen on, we just want the transaction receipt that you get when you do so as an attachment to your nomination documents so that we can see that the payment's been made. Common sense stuff. So I said before, got to be New Zealand citizen on the electoral roll. Nominated and second, they've got to be on the roll in the area you're standing for. Can't stand for the regional council and the council at the same time. Can't stand for more than 1 ward at the same time. But can stand for the mayoralty, the ward, community board. Yeah.
So the only 2 require provision for evidence of citizenship is the passport and there's no other form, private license.
Driver's license doesn't need to be a citizen, so it can be a citizenship certificate that you get if you're a naturalised, if you go to a citizenship ceremony, or passport or your birth certificate. If you're standing for the Māori ward, you don't have to be on the Māori roll, and vice versa. Okay. And you can't change your mind after the close of nominations. Yes, you can change your mind before nominations close, and some people do, but after nominations close, once you see who the list of who the other candidates are, you can't change your mind. You can only withdraw on grounds of medical incapacity. A few hoops to jump through with that, not a big, quite a big deal, not a 5-minute job. Got to get signed by JP and by medical professional and by your nominator and seconder. Does happen every now and then, but grounds of medical incapacity. Can't change your mind. 150-word profile. You'll all be familiar with this, but 150 words, not 151, 150. We count it to the nth degree. Yes, some people will get creative and put hyphens between words that don't have hyphens, and I'll unhyphen them. Don't do formatting, bolding, italics, speech marks, capitalizations, nothing fancy. It's nice and simple, 150 words max. I'll check it. About you and what you're standing for, not about someone else, not about council CE or the staff, about you and what you're standing for, why you want to be on council. Prefer it electronically, but not a PDF. PDF's hard to copy from, Word doc, or typed into the body of the email so that we can easily copy and paste. Preferably not handwritten, because if you give us a handwritten one, we have to decipher it, type it, prone to stuffing it up. So take that risk out of play and give us an electronic copy, please. Those profiles will go up on council's website a couple of weeks after the close of nominations, once they've been signed off for print. And of course, colour photo. Keen on a photo. Taken within the last 12 months. And yes, some people will be creative about photos that are taken in the last 12 months. We check this. If we think it doesn't look like you, we'll ask you for another one. I will sometimes check the metadata on the photo to see if it was in fact taken in the last 12 months, if I have any doubt, because that will tell me. Head and shoulders shot, just yourself, against a nice clear background, no trees, no pets, no hats, no dark sunglasses, no babies, no parrots, nothing fancy, no one else. Bernard.
Hi, Warwick. Nice
How are
to
you?
see.
Yes.
In regards to sunglasses,
Sorry?
in regards to sunglasses,
Yep.
my glasses are self-tinting, so any light actually will make them darker.
Yeah.
And they're prescription glasses.
Yeah.
Still okay?
Yeah, those are okay, but I would encourage you
Not to do it in the sun.
Yeah,
Okay,
not to
okay.
do it in the sun, or not to do it in the sun, not wear them in the sun and then run inside and quickly take a photo. Give it time for them to do their thing. 300 DPI, high res as you can, electronic. Don't rip off a 72 DPI photo off your Facebook page. Send it to us, because when we print it, it'll pixelate and you'll look like a fuzzy bear. You won't want that, nor will I. Yeah.
My partai relates to the photo section, and that first bullet point, it doesn't appear that there is inclusion of cultural headwear. For example, our Middle Eastern whānau who, for cultural reasons, may wear hijab. So what is the
In that case, then yes, we would accept that,
kia ora?
but not just a hat because you feel like you want to wear a hat. Absolutely.
Quite specific with the hijab.
Sure, no problem with that. Here's a good example. There's my name and the format it will be, and my affiliation underneath it. Proven, dedicated, real. Sounds like me. And then the two sentences that are not part of your 150 words, my principal place of residence is or is not within the area that I'm standing, and I'm also standing for these other elections, if that is the case. Then bang into your 150 words. Not 151, 150 max. Come on. Oh. No one said that to me before. Right, you're in trouble, Mike. Fair comment, yes. Not taken within the last 12 months. I will agree to that. Yeah. All right. Candidate videos this time. Something new. We had lots of requests over recent years of more information about how to find out about candidates. So Tauranga City Council did this last time, and a lot of councils doing it this time. Candidate video and candidate videos up on council's website. 90 seconds, 4 questions, things like generic questions like why are you standing, what skills do you bring to the role, what do you want to achieve in the next 3 years, what are the important things facing council, those sorts of things. After the closed nominations, the council will contact each candidate, provide the questions and a booking process for when to slot it in. It'll be the week or 2 after the close of nominations. done at the council premise, level playing field, same lighting, same sound, same, so that there's no difference in the way it's presented and everyone can see. If you want to check it out, go to the Tauranga City Council website and look at the ones that they've got up there already from their last election. Quite interesting to look at. You can tell quite a lot from someone's video with captions for the 4 questions and subtitles for the answers. Okay, quite a good resource. Lots and lots of hits.
The set questions,
Yep,
will they be available beforehand?
absolutely.
Okay. And they will evolve, they will be, the council will set the questions that they want to ask?
Yep. But it'll be generic questions like the ones I just rattled off. Be nothing controversial. Okay, campaigning. Not that I'm supposed to be talking about campaigning, but campaigning. A few things that you can and can't do with campaigning. Can't use council resources. Can't use council colours, council logo, council buildings. Can't rock up to a council meeting in here wearing a Vote For Me t-shirt. Or have your friends, like Bernard's got. Have your friends sitting in the back row with a sign holding up saying Vote For Me. Why? Because live stream, council's social media audience, not a candidate's social media audience. Candidates could get an advantage by using that audience to put their message out to. It's not fair. So no campaigning council premise, no taking photos in front of a council building with the name in the background. Yeah.
So what about council facilities, you know, like a park,
Yeah.
a playground?
Yeah.
You know, Walk of Fame or
You've
something?
got to be practical about that. That's, in the public domain, anyone can go to those, just not a building in the background with the council's name visible. Yeah, so be practical. Can't use council taken photo because it's council resource. And you've got to remember to record your campaign expenses up to a certain limit that I'll talk about in a minute, and record all your expenses and donations during the election period. Yeah.
How will it be divided up amongst the campaign?
Yeah. So if you have a team, a ticket, you can take the costs that are for material that has all those candidates on it and prorata it across the number of candidates. You just divide it up. Pretty straightforward. Remember with your campaigning that be careful with the truth. In your campaigning, if you tell porkies that is factually incorrect, someone can take a complaint to the Advertising Standards Authority. I've seen this done many times, where they have a process for dealing with these. I'll turn around real quick, and if you are found to be telling porkies, they'll make you come and change it. So check that you're sticking to the facts. Usual rules of defamation apply. If you think someone's defamed you, then you can take them to court. But don't come and complain to me about it. Remember, every piece of campaign material, every piece of campaign material has to have that little authorization statement on it. It doesn't say how big or small it has to be. It can be tiny. Like for a sign, sticky label size in the bottom corner can be small, can be little writing down the side. Just has to be enough that we can see it. You could have, like on caps or t-shirts or anything. Got to have your authorization statement. If you're printing badges for people, round badge, got to have a little writing somewhere on it. On the front of a sign, not on the back. Has to be on every piece of campaign material. On your social media page, on your website, but not on every post or email. just as long as it's on the base, the source document or source website. Okay? Social media can get a bit interesting. A few things to think about. Council won't like, or council will unlike all candidates during the election period. Election period being 11 July to 11 October. And council's social media channels can't be used for campaigning or electioneering. Any comments about candidates, council staff, CE during the election period will be zapped. And if you continue to do it, then you would have a grumpy Warwick on the phone and eventually the council might block you, which in my experience has happened many times. Please do not put campaigning or electioneering messages or comments on council's social media channel. But what you can do is take council's post about a project or an event or anything you like and send that to your audience, no problem, with a campaigning message if you like. You could send out a post saying, look, I was involved in this project and how well it went, how fantastic am I? No problem, it's all good. Just can't do anything back to council's social media channel because it's council's social media channel, not candidates' social media channel. So you can't rate, review, like, tag, share, do anything that appears on council's feed. So keep it simple. Yes, to your audience, no, going back. Simple as that. Set out in the Candidate Handbook, there's a whole long list of council's social media channels in there. So please check that out. And remember, it is against the legislation to post a photo of your completed voting paper on the internet. As a candidate or as an elector, you can take a photo of it and snib just your name with a circle and a tick in it and post that. But you can't show other candidates with circles without a tick. And I'll show you what this looks like in a sec. Not my favourite topic. Signs always causes problems. Stick to the rules. Council's hoardings policy, as I said before, they're all different. Check it out in the handbook. This is the big picture stuff. 90 days, 3 months max, 11th of July. Not the 10th of July, 11th of July. Complaints about signs go to council's enforcement team, but complaints about authorisations can come to me. I've got much more important things to do to be worrying about authorisations on signs, but I'll let the candidates know and we'll get on with it. Remember, the cost of the wood that holds up your sign is not an election expense. Okay? The cost of the sign is, but not the wood, poles in the ground holding it up. Donations and expenses. We'll all go to sleep reading this, but it is what it is. It's in the Candidate Handbook. It's pretty tricky, this stuff, with different shades of grey. But the key thing is, if someone gives you a donation, you have to record it. Even if it was last year. There's no time limit on donations. If it was for your campaign, you've got to record it. Even if someone says to you, here's $500 for your campaign, but I want you to keep that anonymous. You can't. If you know who it is, or you can reasonably work it out, then you have to record it. Could you get an anonymous donation these days? Don't know how you could, but if you did, you record it as anonymous, but if it's over $1,500, you've got to give the balance to the council. So who's going to do that? How are you going to get an anonymous donation? Few rules around volunteer labour and those sorts of things. So sing out if you've got any questions about this. Can get a bit tricky and we'll point you in the right direction. Remember, crowdfunding services do not meet the requirements for declarations of donations. So they can't record who it's from. By their own nature, they're anonymous. And here is the limit of expenditure that you can spend on your campaign, including GST. Max amount based on the population, not number of electors, population. And if you're standing for the mayor and the ward, it's the higher limit, the mayor amount that counts, not adding them together. Okay. Three-month period. I get asked this question all the time. What do you mean by 3 months? Do you actually mean 3 months? Yes, I actually mean 3 months. If you put a full page ad in the Waikato Times on the 10th of July, outside the 3 months by 1 day, not part of your election expenses, because the Waikato Times is a daily paper. The next day, there's another paper. The previous day's paper is Gone Burgers, not part of your election expenses. But if you put it in a monthly magazine on the 10th of July that goes into a 3 month period, then yes, the cost of that is included in your campaign expenditure. If you assign writing your car now, you can sign write your car, as long as you've got an authorisation on it. If you sign writing your car and you're driving it around for the next 4 months, 3 months, the 4 months, 75%, 75% of the cost of the sign writing is what you declare in your candidate expense return. Remember those documents, that document has to be provided to the council by the middle of July and has to go on council's website for 7 years. You can go and look now at the ones that were there from the last 2 elections. You'll get your $200 deposit back once you've put in your candidate expense return, assuming you've got more than 25% of the votes of the lowest successful person in that election. Could be careful about a few other things. Bribery, treating. Yes, you can have a coffee with your mates down the local cafe and shout them a coffee, no problems. You just can't say, I'll shout that coffee for you if you vote for me. That's treating. You can have a campaign meeting like this in a hall like this for people to come along and hear how wonderful you are and provide tea and bickies afterwards, but no alcohol. Alcohol is seen as treating. Can't give away an item of value that could be used for another purpose. Pen, fridge magnet, they can be used long after the election, item of value against the legislation. Anytime, anytime, anytime. Yeah.
Determining item of value,
Yep.
that's from a monetary perspective?
Yeah. Shade's grey, but depends on what it is. But, you know, like if you give away a pen, you know, what's a pen worth? $1? But
And the purpose of my putting this to the floor,
Value from a Māori perspective,
sure.
value from a Māori perspective as opposed to our tangata tiriti or kaunihira perspective, are very different.
Sure, understand that. Depends on the context and what it is. So if you're unsure, ask us first. I do get asked about what does undue influence mean under the legislation. It is not someone knocking on your door, giving you a pamphlet saying, you really should vote for me. The voting papers are coming out tomorrow. I reckon you should vote for me and quickly get it back in the post. It's not undue influence. Undue influence is when someone is standing over you while you've got your pen poised over your voting paper, ready to tick a box, and someone says, not that box, tick that one. That's undue influence in the act of voting. So that's what that means. It's a good example of good sign or a voting paper. On the left, not so on the right-hand side, where you can see it's got other candidates' names and crosses or nothing beside them, because it looks like an imitation voting paper. I've had a few people do this over the years and they've been taken to court and prosecuted. Please do not go down this path. Here's a good example of an ex-mayor standing for council again. Anybody know where that is? That's the Horowhenua District Council, Levin. Mayor Michael stood again, car was authorised, all good on the back, but what's wrong with it? Parked right outside the front door to the council building, which is just to the right. He had a car park underneath the council building where he could park his car, but he parked it, chosen and put it in the council car park right outside the front of the building. Council resource, unfair advantage to everyone walking into the council who would see it. So I asked him to remove it. So please don't get there. Here's Brady. Sign of a man holding a sign. Quite clever. You can see his authorisation statement clearly on it. You might remember this one from a few years ago. Do my best, but I can't promise anything. He's not a candidate. Just a guy put a sign up as a laugh. The council thought it was great, left it up. Strange but true. Okay, nearly at the end. My beloved, wonderful orange bins. More of this time round. As we know, the postal system's slowly turning to custard. So keen for everyone to put their voting papers in an orange bin, orange voting bin, which are going to be at, Joe, 20 locations? Maybe 25? 20? Okay. Around the district, supermarkets, council premise, places that are easy to get to where you go to on your normal day business. Mitre 10s, Bunnings, those guys, maybe?
Having a look at those.
Just having a look. Okay. List will be in the candidate profile booklet. It'll be on council's website. We'll do lots of comms about it. Keen to get it into the orange bins as opposed to the postal system, which takes an age to get to us. That's what they look like. Exactly that. Some decent branding. Marley, your slides coming up soon? Electoral rolls, as I said, Electoral Commission provide us with the rolls. Can't provide them electronically to candidates against the legislation. Can sell you a hard copy if you really want one for $100 for the whole district or $50 per ward. Can't be electronic. And we use that roll, final roll, to send the voting papers to. If your address isn't correct, you haven't updated it, and you don't get your voting paper, then you can come in and do a special vote at the council offices during the voting period. Got to sign a declaration to do so. It takes a couple of minutes, pretty easy to do, no great dramas. But that's the only way you can vote during that voting period. Can be posted out to you if there's enough time, but in reality these days, just easily come into the council office. If you're on an unpublished roll, you need to do that, or if the dog ate it, we lost it. Usual deal with election results, same as last time. We'll produce it about 3 o'clock, which will be an 85 to 90%. And council will then let everyone know. And then the next day, once we've received all the votes from the orange voting bins on the late Friday and the Saturday morning at our processing centre in Christchurch, we process them all and produce the prelim result the next day, which is all the votes, but not including specials. Then we do the special votes later in the week, produce the result on Thursday the 16th, possibly the Wednesday, depending on how many there are.
The process around special votes, do they come to you from the council or do they go directly to you?
So once they've been processed, once they've been received by the council after the close of nominations, they are bundled up and couriered to us in Christchurch, unopened. We check the declaration with the special vote to make sure that the person is in fact eligible, and that includes sending a list of those people to the Electoral Commission for them to determine whether the address is in fact correct or not. If the Electoral Commission come back and say, yes, that person is correctly enrolled at that address that they've put on their special vote declaration, then we open it and process that special vote and include it in the final result.
And what about, is there overseas special votes coming through?
No.
No, they're all in country.
Yeah, in Waipa, we had about 250 special votes from memory. Then after that, council's inaugural meeting, which is on the timetable, I can't remember the date. Quite a formal process, big deal. Friends of whānau, a ceremony. Everybody comes in, goes through an oath of allegiance process. Then after that, an induction process that Steph and Kirsty and Joe will run to get everybody up to speed to start off the new council. And here is a list of all the places where you can get documents about the election. Key one being the Canada Handbook. Please make sure you read the Canada Handbook. Covers off all the stuff I talked about tonight, but much of it in a lot more detail. Yeah. Microphone, please, Joe.
Sorry, can I just go back to the signage? Are there rules around where you can put them in public places, or is it just private property in Waipa? Because
That's a good question.
I know, because it's not mentioned in the first thing I read.
Joe,
Yeah.
you better help me out here. Kirsty, can you remember?
So actually, under our bylaw, it prohibits the erection of election signs in public places. So it is on private property. And then you've also got the district plan rules to work through. But there's a whole section on pages 25 and 26, the handbook, which will give you all the detail that you need about the signage.
So private land only, right? 3 months, 11 July. Marley's got a few slides to skip through and then I'll come back and do the last one.
Yeah.
Tēnā koutou katoa, tuatahi tēnā koe whaia mō tō karakia I tēnei pō. Thank you, Steph, and the team here at Waipa for letting me tag along. Some familiar faces in the crowd. Awesome. And thank you, Warwick, for covering off the nuts and bolts of the electoral process and rules. Really appreciate that. Also, acknowledgements to everybody here, our potential candidates. Thank you for making the effort for coming out tonight and learning a little bit more about council, the role of a councillor, and how you might be able to get yourself, stand for election for either Waipa District Council. And I'm hoping that there are some people here tonight that might be interested in the regional council. So just quickly, we work really closely with Waipa District Council and all of the councils, in fact, in the Waikato region, so that the electoral process that we deliver is seamless, it is cohesive, and we are promoting consistency across the region as much as we possibly can. What slide is this one? So look, I could repeat everything that Warwick just shared with you in his 60 or so slides, but luckily I don't have to, because the rules are applicable right across the motu. I bet you're relieved I'm not going to go through all of that information again. And also Steph did a really wonderful job talking about the role of a councillor and what the job entails. So I'm not going to cover that off either. Instead, I've got about 3 slides that is really focused in on regional council. And so I'll just go over that really quickly. I acknowledge you've already been here for over an hour. And so if you're still tuned in to my part of the presentation, thank you. So let's start here with our strategic direction. So there are 6 areas that shape everything that we do at the Waikato Regional Council, our 6 strategic priorities. Why? Water, protecting our rivers, our lakes, aquifers, biodiversity and biosecurity, safeguarding native species and ecosystems, coastal and marine, managing coastal hazards and also marine resources, sustainable development and infrastructure, which involves planning for growth while protecting the environment, community connections, partnering with iwi, hapu and communities, and also transition to a low emissions economy, which is all the action we take related to climate change. So these strategic priorities are set right at the beginning of a council term, shortly after the election process, and it is one of the first major pieces of work that you will be involved in if elected to council, and it shapes everything else that comes after the strategic direction. So really important to start with this slide here and this information. Our region at a glance, as you can see, we cover a significant rohe from the Coromandel Peninsula in the north, across the Hauraki Plains to the west coast at where you see Port Waikato, all along the west coast down to Moko, and then coming back inland across the King Country, taking in Ruapehu at the very southern end, and then back up towards north, taking in the Taupo and also Waipa areas. We have, as Warwick mentioned, 2 Māori constituencies and also 6 general constituencies, and all up we have 14 elected members. Some specifics about the positions that are up for contest in this particular area, the Waipa area. We have 2 seats in the Waipa King Country General Constituency, and also 1 seat available in the Ngā Taikiuta Māori constituency. A bit about time commitment. Most of the councillors are part-time in their responsibilities, but it does really vary on the number of responsibilities that you might take up in your role as a councillor. For example, if you are appointed as our council chairperson, that person works mostly full-time. It is a big role, being the head of the council. And And other councillor positions will vary depending on whether you have additional responsibilities like committee chairpersons or deputy chairs. Along with that, the remuneration attached to each of these roles varies. And listed here on this slide is the current remuneration for our elected members, starting at the top with our chairperson, who is remunerated close to 170,000 per year. We have our deputy chairperson of council currently on a remuneration of around about 87,000, and then a number of committee chair people are remunerated in a range between 76 to around 80,000. And a councillor that doesn't have any additional responsibilities has a base salary of around $66,000. Like the district council, it is the remuneration authority that sets the remuneration for all elected members across the country, and they take a look at these payments on an annual basis. So that's basically all I wanted to walk through really quickly. If anyone in the room is interested in learning a little bit more about the Regional Council and standing for election, then I will be around after this last word from Warwick. So please do come and talk to me. I'm really interested to have conversations with you tonight. I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Marley. You might be wondering, where did I get my flash shoes from? Store called Mayer, M-A-H-E-R. It's an interesting day when the returning officers are giving out fashion advice, isn't it? Maybe not. All right, last slide. No online voting. As I said before, unfortunately, online voting not yet in place for council elections. Been saying maybe for 10 years, but maybe one day. Lots of orange bins. Please don't leave lodging nominations till the last minute. Keep yourself safe. Think about that candidate safety stuff. It was pretty straightforward. Election day, Saturday, 11th of October. That's it for me. Almost bang on, well, even 5 minutes early. So thank you very much for all of that. Please come and sing out, talk to me afterwards if you want, got any questions. And Steph will say a few words to wrap things up. Yeah.
I have one question about
Scrutineers. Yeah.
What may be able to scrutineer?
Yeah. So the days of scrutineers for council elections are pretty much gone by the waysides because the legislation doesn't allow them to see anything unless it's after the close of voting. So before the close of voting, all the voting papers processed in Christchurch, overseen by a JP under the legislation, who was there to make sure that the vote processing is carried out in accordance with the legislation. Scrutineers can be there for straight after midday on election day, but soon after that we hit the button and produce the result and send that out to everyone. Sure, there's still votes being processed that are coming in from orange bins around the country, but really there's nothing much to see and the results are already out there. So reality is, what's the point?
Voting machines that read these, are they all in-house and not connected via net at all to anywhere else?
They're air-gapped, completely offline within its own distinct system, which is audited and certified under the legislation to make sure that the system does what it's supposed to do.
With the counting,
Yeah.
you have a running total as the votes come in, so you count them as they come in or wait till close it?
The legislation allows us to process the votes as they come in. That means extracting them, scanning them, and running some software over them to record the votes into a database. The software does not allow us to tally the votes until after midday on the last day. So the counting piece of the software is locked out until midday on election day. And after that, we hit the button, produce the result, does the tallying, then we send it out.
So they sent to a post office box that you collect from, or are they sent directly for your address, or likely, what is the number of hands that
Yeah,
can
sure.
handle those votes before they get there?
Okay, so for example, the orange voting bins, they're cleared by our contractor DX regularly throughout the voting period and moved through the courier network to our office in Christchurch daily. Those voting papers that are put back into street receivers, New Zealand Post or DX street receivers, go through the postal network through both of those organisations, eventually to DX, to us in Christchurch overnight each day. And then those that are on the last day are cleared by the council, up back to, in this case here, picked up by a courier soon after midday and put on the next plane straight to Christchurch and then processed with the rest.
There's actually no counting of the numbers of votes that are received from the council to you or anything like that. I mean, no one be able to say, oh, there's 100 went from this council to you.
Correct. So and on the last day, for example, we know how many the council has got. The council sends them to us on courier with what that count is, and we then know when we get it in Christchurch, we check it back to see if it's the right number. We know what it's going to be. This is not what the votes are, it's a number of envelopes. Yeah, number of envelopes. Okay. Well documented, been in place for 25 years, nailed down process, audited, checked, triple checked. Okay. Steph.
Thank you very much, everybody, for participating, for being here tonight. I think that shows, there's a lot of complexity in that presentation, but very important because it does underpin the robust and transparent election and voting process in New Zealand. And it's something that we need to protect and preserve, really, really important. So I hope you take away that message. Yep, council doesn't run the election. These guys run the election. There is a lot of material in that. So Warwick, your website has got all of that material on it. I'm picking if people want to take it away. It's in the presentation at the back. Where can they go? If they go home tomorrow and go, heck, what did he say about that? Where do they go and find it?
Yeah. So the first thing is the Canada Handbook. Second is on our website. Actually, you can go and do this now. You can go and look at the election results, the election returns, and the nominations received from all the councils for 2022 and 2019. So a link on our webpage that will go in and show you the number of votes received by every council, by ward, by day. You can look at that now, public information, and then you can contact me and ask any other questions that you want to know about the process. Yep, it's
All of
there.
that is on there?
Yep.
Yep, great. So I would, if I had that for an hour, I'd wake up tomorrow going, oh my gosh, I can't remember all of that. So the website's there, the handbook is there, and really, really important. We truly are grateful that you've come tonight. You're showing interest. Whether or not you choose to stand, what we'd also really encourage you to do is encourage your whānau, your family and friends to vote. It's really important and your vote matters. So please, if you go away and think, no, that's not for me at this time, just get your friends and whānau voting. That's really, really important. There's a hot cup of tea and some kai there, but I just want to acknowledge a few people. So firstly, Warwick, thank you for being here tonight. We didn't normally have better weather in Te Awamutu, in Waipa, I promise you that. But as I say, it's field days. Marley, thank you for coming from the Regional Council and giving that perspective, our sister council in terms of the big sister council. So ngā mihi nui ki a koe e hoa. To Joe and Zoe from our team, our governance team, and to Kirsty for being here as our Deputy Chief Executive. Thanks to my team for staying here too late on the night. But most importantly, thank you to you all for coming out. And I really want you to get home safely tonight. There is a weather warning out there. I've just been reading that until about midnight tonight. So please take care as you journey home. And Whaia, I would ask you to say karakia. I'm happy to say karakia whakamutinga, but you started, so... Tika? Right, okay.
E wai tatau.
Beautiful, thank you. So we'll close with karakia. It's just a moment in time, whatever your view is, but a moment in time just to take a breath, leave this conversation in the room and ensure that everyone travels home safely to your whānau. So he karakia whakamutunga, so closing karakia. E noi tātou, mai te tipua, mai te tāwhito, mai te kāhui o ngā ariki, mai te tāwhiwhi atu ki a rongo, whānau, hara mai te toki, haumie uie tāke.
Tūtira mai ngā